Gate slammed behind him with a clang that felt like it shook the frozen ground. Final, like a hammer sealing a coffin. Sergei, gray on the outside, flinched, then forced his back straight. He drew a sharp breath. The camp air punched his lungs. Hangover fumes, cheap makorka, unwashed bodies, sour slop, and soaking damp. He knew that smell. Here, in this Red Special Regime camp up north, it was thicker, meaner. The paddy wagons and the convoy were done. Ahead lay years of hard time. After the shakedown, guards flipping his meager bundle with lazy cruelty, and a bath with reeking carbolic soap, he and a dozen same gray faceless figures were pushed into the living zone. The camp met them with silence, heavy, pressing. Hundreds of eyes watched from barrack windows and narrow passages, predators sizing up fresh meat. Barrack 3, Section 2, the convoy man growled, nudging his rifle toward a long timber building blackened by time and weather. The painted number had peeled, so the 3 looked like a coiled snake ready to strike. Gray stepped over the threshold. The stench hit harder inside, dim. One dull bulb under a wire cage barely pushed back the dark. Along both walls, bunks in 2 tiers ran like rows of lidless wooden coffins. Men sat, sprawled, smoked, played cards. Every voice shut off at once. Dozens of eyes locked on the newcomers. "Fresh meat, boys," someone drawled from an upper bunk, nasally. A few chuckles, cut short. From a far corner, screened off by a sheet, a heavy shape rose. Short, barrel-shouldered, bull neck, swollen face. A split scar tugged one lip into a permanent crooked grin. Blue church domes inked his bare chest. Rings on his fingers flashed, signs of long criminal rank. He walked up to Gray, slow. "Well, well, welcome, guest," he rumbled, garlic and makorka breath washing over. "They call me Lip. I keep order. And you, who blew you in here? Where from?" Registration, first and biggest test. How he handled this decided everything. Live like a man, or drop to the very bottom where life is counted not in years, but in hours. Gray knew the rules. No fear, no swagger. Sergei came in from Cresty, he said evenly, looking Lip dead in the eyes. Not at the bridge of the nose, not past the head, right at the pupils. Show you don't blink. Sergei, Lip stretched the scar into a wolfish smile. "That's what your mama calls you. On the road, who are you?" Gray, Lip circled him like a horse buyer at a fair. 2 stringy shadows slid in behind him, eyes empty and wolf flat. "What article, kid? What brings you to our spa?" The word kid was a test, a slap you had to answer right. "Article 105, Part 2, Robbery with Violence," Gray said calm. "I'm no square. I live the thief's life." He did not say, "I'm a thief in law." Call yourself crowned when you're not, and you die quick. But he marked himself as black suit, on the criminal side. Lip stopped nose to nose, 10 centimeters. "Thief's life, huh?" he hissed. "You've had 2 stretches. First as a juvie, hooliganism. Second, the pocket trade. Rang 10 years general." Lip snorted. "You look fresh for that? Maybe you worked for the bosses. Maybe you were a goat, a trustee, librarian, storeroom. Maybe you skimmed from the stash." The air turned solid. Every man stilled. This was the fulcrum, an accusation of serving the administration, a turncoat. One wrong beat and they'd break him right here, in front of everyone. "I live by the code," Gray's voice went steel. "I don't know that dirt on myself. I don't forgive it on others. Talking is easy. Lifting sacks is work. If you've got a concrete claim, say it. If you're just flapping air, that's nothing." His heart hammered, but he let the silence hang. He'd thrown a challenge, not straight on, but clean. Lip stared, beady eyes drilling him. The barrack was so quiet someone's scared hiccup popped from a corner. One of Lip's young hangers-on twitched toward Gray, but Lip stopped him with a finger flick. "Got some edge," Lip said at last, the bark gone from his tone. "We'll see, Gray. Maybe you won't shed your color." He jerked his chin at the darkest, rankest corner. "Your bunk's by the bucket, for now." Status set. Lowest rung, but not broken. A trial birth. Every step, every word now under glass. Gray nodded and walked. He felt eyes burn his back. He passed the bunks with men. Workers doing time for domestic messes, embezzlement, fights. Curious, wary looks. past the untouchables huddled in the gloom. They never raised their eyes. His bunk was bottom tier. Someone above coughed a deep, wet bark. The mattress was a lumpy sack that stank of piss and sweat. Gray tossed his bundle and sat with his spine to the cold, wet wall. He didn't unpack. In this world, nothing is yours until you prove it. He listened. The barrack breathed again. Low whispers. Boards creaked. Someone mumbled a warm, sad song. But Gray knew the real talk continued. They were deciding his fate. An hour later, the door groaned. A small, dry old man with a wedge of gray beard and sharp, clear eyes stepped in. Plain camp jacket, moved with quiet dignity that shut the room up. Even Lip stood to meet him. "Peace, Vaca," Lip said, almost polite. The old man nodded, barely glancing at him. His eyes swept the room and pinned Gray. On the old man's collarbones, under his open shirt, 2 8-point stars. The same would be on his knees. A thief-in-law. The real kind. "This the new one?" he asked softly, a slight Caucasian lilt, voice calm but heavy enough that no one cut him off. "He is, Vaca. Says he's ours," Lip answered. Vaca walked to Gray's bunk. He didn't radiate threat like Lip. He radiated something colder, old wolf certainty. "Stand," he said. Gray stood. Vaca studied him for a long beat, as if reading not a face but a ledger, every sin and fear. "They say you had some edge," Vaca said. "I answered how I was taught," Gray replied. "Who taught you?" "Life," Gray said. "Good teachers," Vaca nodded. "Strict, too. Mistakes cost dear. You said your life is a thief's life. What does that mean?" "Second exam, the real one. Not the yard boss now, the law itself." "It means," Gray chose words like tools. "I don't work for the masters. I don't steal from my own. I keep the thief's course and back it. Honor and decency aren't empty to me. I live by the code." "Code?" Vaca's mouth tilted. "Many say that. Mostly those who don't know it. Thief's honor is when your word is harder than rock. When you'll give your life for a brother. When you strangle a rat with your own hands for skimming the common. When you don't bend to cops. When you don't break in the box. When you put the common above your own." He watched Gray's face, then set a palm on his shoulder. "No police stink on you. No goat work," Gray said firmly. "Clean." Vaca withdrew his hand. "Lip," he called without looking back. "Give the man a proper place. Not right to have a straight prisoner huddle by the bucket." Lip came at once. The hostility was gone, replaced by wary obedience. "You heard, Gray. Move up there, second tier. Take Siavka's bunk. He hit the hole yesterday." Gray looked at the spot, mid-barrack, upper tier. A black berth. He'd crossed the line. Accepted, conditionally. "My thanks," he said to Vaca. The old thief said nothing, a nod. He slid back behind the curtain. The fabric fell. He was gone, and yet he was everywhere. Gray gathered his bundle and climbed. The neighbor, a limping man with a tattooed USSR map and "Never Forget Mother" across his chest, held out a hand. "Kolyan." "Gray. Heard how you danced with Lip. Clean work," Kolyan said. "Lip's a bull, muscle, no mind. Vaca's the head. In this camp, we've got 2 sons. One in the sky, one is Vaca, remember." "Remember," Gray said. He lay back, fingers laced behind his head. The boards were hard, but after the bucket corner, they felt like down. He stared at the black ceiling, listening to the barracks hum. He'd survived the first bend, only a start. This camp was a hungry animal. It would test him daily, hourly. Any slip could be the last. That night, after lights out, the barracks sank into an anxious doze, cut by coughs, groans, bunk squeak. Through the small barred window, a slice of black sky and a searchlight's blade drifted across the wall. Far dogs barked. The sound bit bone deep. He replayed the road here, the last job. A quick hit on a factory boss's flat. Smooth as butter. Cash, gold, gaudy trinkets. Bags were full. Then the wife started screaming. Vitya Skar lunged to shut her up. She snatched a heavy statue and cracked his head. He dropped. Gray didn't think. He stepped and struck. The knife slid in easy. Too easy. Only when he saw her surprised glassing eyes and the dark stains spreading across silk did it register. They ran. They took Vitya in 2 days, wounded. He didn't get far. He kept quiet for a week, then snapped. Gave Gray up ribs and all. Bastard, Gray mouthed in the dark. Betrayal has a separate bill. If he ever met Vitya again, he knew the payment. They grabbed him at the station, trying to board a train to Tashkent. Trial was quick. Prosecutors screamed for the chair. The judge gave 15 special regime. 15. He was 28. If he walked out, it would be at 43. Old. A thin whisper rose from below. Kid. Hey, kid. Gray leaned down. A soft-voiced older man he'd clocked during the day. Quiet, unremarkable, one of the men, stood there. What is it, father? Name's Mikhailich. When you talked to Lip, you were bold. Listen, be careful, the old man breathed. Lip holds grudges. He won't forgive. He expected Vaca to leave you cold. Now he'll wait to set you up. He's here as watcher for another thief, Sukumi. Vaca's his own man. They've got their war. Quiet. And you're between two fires. Gray listened. Valuable. Thank you, father, he whispered back. I'll mind it. Sleep. Mikhailich sighed and slipped away. War. Gray felt it. The camp wasn't just a pen. It was a cauldron where fates boiled, lives snapped, and the heat was fiercer than outside. He was a chip in that rolling boil now. He shut his eyes. Sleep wouldn't come. Lips' scarred grin, Vaca's cold gaze, the woman's surprised face with steel in her chest all stared back. To be a man here had a price. He was ready. Fear was gone. Only cold, singing emptiness stayed, and one thought, survive. Survive at all costs, then one day find Vitya Scar and settle the account. Outside, the dogs barked again. The searchlight's blade slashed the wall like a knife, cutting what remained of his past. This wasn't a home. It was a grave they'd lowered him into early. To crawl out, he'd have to become something uglier than the thing that dug it. A clammy night wrapped the zone. The barrack lay swaddled in cold fog and peat smoke. Inside the long, low shed, steeped in sweat, foot wraps, and cheap tobacco, silence held tight. Now and then, a dry cough, a bunk's arthritic creak, a sleep mutter. The cage bulb buzzed, picking out twin tiers of bunks, shaved heads, shadows dancing over hollow cheeks. Kolima lay top tier, eyes wide. 12 hours on timber felling had turned his body to lead, begged for sleep, but his mind was strung to a wire. He listened for the zone's second life, the one that woke in these dead hours. Here, in 1962, in one of the countless strict camps sunk deep in taiga, every sound mattered. A week since the convoy, and he already felt the invisible tendrils of the local power, the thief family, probing him, weighing him on their hard scales. In the far corner, the thieves' nook glowed with a handmade cigarette. That's where the chiefs lived, the zone's steward, a thief-in-law, Bear. A slow, sad man around 50 with small, deep-set eyes that seemed to see right through. Around him, a couple of ranked old hands who'd survived fire, water, and a dozen transits. A soft squeak cut the hush. A shadow moved down the aisle. A runner, young errand boy they called Wick, eased up to Kolima's bunk and rasped, barely a sound. Kolima, Batya wants you. They called Bear Batya, the father. Kolima's heart thumped a dull warning. The test. It begins. He slid down, feet finding the ice-cold boards. The whole barrack seemed to hold its breath. Dozens of ears strained for any scrape. Dozens of eyes tracked him in the dark. For the men, this was a show. For him, a walk on a razor. He reached the thieves' nook. Bear sat on a lower bunk, massive legs set wide, breeches tucked into boots. He didn't look at Kolima. He picked under a fingernail with a sliver of wood. Beside him, a wiry, scar-mapped hood leaned on the wall. "Sit on your haunches," Bear ground out without raising his head. His voice was stone on stone. Kolima dropped into a squat. "That's the order here. You don't sit on a thief's bunk unless told." He waited. The silence stretched, deliberate, a test of nerve. "I've heard you're a straight man, Kolima," Bear finally said, flicking the splinter aside. He lifted those small eyes. The look weighed a ton. "Walk the code. Not a snitch, not red." Kolima held his tongue. Answering too quick meant admitting their authority. Staying mute could read as defiance. He cut the middle. I live as my conscience tells me, he said level. Conscience? Bear rolled it on his tongue. It's different in every mouth. Prosecutor has one, guard has one, we've got ours. Human. He leaned in a hair. So tell me this. In the common house, our hut, when a rat shows, stealing the last crust from our own, or worse, dragging word to the oppers on the tail, what's conscience say? What do we do? The question was a straight stab to the ribs. Kalama felt the ice crawl down his spine, but his face stayed plain. He knew who they meant. For days the rumor ran about one Stiopa the Rotten, a mechanic from industrial. Word was he'd given an operative the thieves' stash, a couple packs of tea, a few rubles scraped from the men. For that, he got a warm job in the boiler room and extra bread. Checked, confirmed through trusted lines outside. Only the execution remained, and it looked like they'd picked him, the newcomer, to do it. Bleed in, prove black suit from the first step. Rats get crushed, Kolama said, short and hard. There was no other answer. Any wobble, any hedging, read as weakness. And cowards live by the bucket. Bear nodded once. That's what I say. Keep the house clean, or the rot spreads and turns the barrack into a corner. He paused, eyes on Kolama's face. He didn't give orders. Thieves in law don't issue direct commands for wet work. They don't hand down orders. They build a situation where a proper inmate understands what must be done himself. It wasn't a test of cruelty. It was a test of code, of whether you'd risk your own hide, your term, even your life for the thieves' law. Tomorrow in the repair shop, the bear said, pausing as he fished a tobacco pouch from his bootleg. Word is one lathe's acting up. Needs a real fix, so it never squeals again. He rolled a cigarette slow and neat. Castade struck a match and held the flame out. The bear drew in, then blew a thin veil of smoke straight into Kolama's face. You're a metal worker, Kolama. File says 6th category. Means your hands work. Can you handle a lathe? That wasn't a question. It was a sentence Kolama had to carry out. Refuse, and you signed your own death warrant. They'd brand you filth, and any thief would feel honored to slide steel into your ribs. Worse yet, they might dump you to the bottom, break you, unman you, turn you into dust for the rest of your days. Agree, and you walk toward a firing squad, or, at best, another 25 years, and a sealed prison where men don't come back from. All this for them, for people he'd known a week, for a law that, here, outweighed the states. Kolama lifted his eyes and met the bear's. His whole life in this pit was being decided in that look. I can fix a lathe, he said, flat without a tremor, if there's a tool. The bear's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Tools you'll have, he rumbled. Desire to work is what matters. Go rest, master. Tomorrow's heavy. Kolama rose and walked back to his bunk without looking around. He could feel the stares on his back. The bear's measuring, Castade's contemptuous, the men's tight, fearful respect. He climbed up to the top rack again. Sleep had fled. One thought pounded. There was no choice. The choice had been made years ago, the day he crossed a prison threshold and decided he'd rather die standing than live on his knees. Only you stand on other people's bones. Morning came iron gray and raw. After roll call, to the bark of guards and snarl of shepherds, the column trudged to work. The repair shop was a cavern of metal roar, saw scream, and machine oil. Tractors got rebuilt here, parts turned, bars welded. The camp kept itself alive. They put Kolama on the lathes. His shift partner was that same Stepa the Rotten, not an accident. The bear's hand was in it. Stepa was mid-30s, eyes skittering, a permanent ingratiating grin that spread whenever staff came near. He fussed, he flattered, he tried small talk with Kolama. Kolama answered in monosyllables, eyes elsewhere. He saw not a man, but a function, a problem to be solved. At lunch, when the shop's howl sagged for a few minutes, a forgettable welder drifted by. Without a word, pretending to pass a chunk of bread, he pressed a heavy, cloth-wrapped shape into Kolama's palm. Kolama slid it into his jacket sleeve without a blink. A shiv, crude but lethal. A sharpened file with an electrical tape grip. A tool. Now, wait. He worked through the day, turning a mindless billet, but every sense was taut. He watched the guards, Stepa's movements, the signals he knew would come. Death has its choreography. One wrong step, and you drop through the floor. The sign came an hour before quitting time. One of the bear's men, a slab called Skull, accidentally dropped a heavy crate of blanks on a civilian foreman's foot, yelling. Motion. All the guards in the bay converged at once. Another thief, Gray, took up a post in the aisle, blocking the sightline to the far corner where a makeshift John hid behind rusting sheet stacks, a reeking hole in the floor curtained by filthy canvas. Stepa had gone there minutes ago. Kolima cut power to his lathe. His heart hammered in his temples, but outside he was stone. He walked that way as if he too needed the John. His hand in the sleeve clenched the taped handle. Behind the canvas, Stepa stood with his back turned, relieving himself. He didn't hear Kolima over the shop noise. Stepa, Kolima said quietly. The man flinched and half turned. For an instant, his eyes were puzzled. Then the animal terror hit. He understood. The ingratiating smile sloughed off, leaving a crooked mouth ready to scream. Brothers, don't, he bleated, hands up. Kolima didn't let him finish. No anger, no pity. Just that cold necessity to bring the job to term. One short driving step. Left hand clamped the mouth. Right hand struck. Not in the back like a rat. In the chest, straight. Like the old ones taught. Ask a man's eyes for the answer. Steel went in with a wet crack. Stepa's eyes flew wide with shock. He choked. Foam bubbled. Kolima kept the blade there, then shoved the limp body forward. Stepa fell face down into the reek. The weapon stayed in him. That was the point. Not just a killing, a message for the thieves, for the men, and most of all for the operations officer. The family did this. We don't hide. Kolima stepped back, wiped his bloody hand on the filthy wall, and slipped out. Gray, still on lookout, gave a hairline nod and drifted away. The commotion at the crate still raged. No one saw a thing. Kolima went back to his lathe and hit the switch. Metal howl swallowed him again. His hands shook, but he forced them to grip the tool and cut. He watched the spinning stock, the glittering stream of shavings, and saw only the blown-wide eyes of the man he'd just erased. He'd passed the test. He'd killed on someone else's word to keep himself alive in this grinder. The price felt obscene. They found the body only at shift's end, when the bay emptied. Sirens bled across the camp. Everything stopped, a full shakedown. Everyone hauled onto the yard in ranks. Needling cold rain, guard dogs and nightsticks tore through barracks, turning them inside out, hunting steel and traces. Kolima stood shoulder to shoulder, staring at the back of the man in front. He was ready. He knew what came next. Half an hour later, they plucked him from the line. 2 guards wrenched his arms behind him and dragged him toward HQ, the ops officer's office. Captain Neverov's room was an island of tidy calm in the ruin. Stacked papers, a glass carafe, a telephone. Neverov, 40-ish, worn face, intelligent eyes, smoked behind the desk. He jerked his chin at a stool. Sit, he said evenly. The guards left, sealing the heavy door. Kolima sat. So, hero, Neverov began, flicking ash. They say you're a wizard. Fix lathes, fix people. Kolima said nothing. First rule in the ops office. Silence. Didn't see, don't know, not involved. Every word becomes a weapon. A man got murdered in the shop today, Neverov went on, voice low. My snitch between us in your work area. Shanked with a blade made from a file, and at your bench. He spread his hands. 1 file missing. Already checked. Coincidence? Kolima fixed his gaze on a spot on the wall behind a portrait of Dzerzhinsky. His face didn't move. I don't know what you mean, comrade officer. I worked my shift. I never left my machine. Really? Neverov's smile was thin. Half the shop's already whispering that Kolima set things straight, that the bear put you on trial, that you passed. Aiming to be a thief, are we? His tone sharpened. Look at me, you kill a man and then play dumb? I can rot you in the hole, throw you in the box till you forget daylight. I'll strip your soul out and you'll talk. Kolima didn't twitch. He knew this dance. First the roar, then the sugar. Neverov exhaled, lit again. All right, let's be civil, Nikolai. The first time he used his name. You've got 7 left, if all's quiet. For this murder, they'll nail you to the wall. Firing squad. Understand? I don't need your execution. I need the bear. He runs this honeypot. Give him to me. Say he ordered it, and I'll float you through as a witness. Maybe tack on a couple years, that's it. maybe even parole you early. Think, one life. Those thieves, they'll burn you tomorrow if they feel like it. You're a tool to them, like that file. Anyone normal would take that deal. 7 years or a bullet. But Kolima wasn't normal anymore. To hand over a thief is to become a bitch. Bitches don't get executed clean. They get found and finished slow, in any cell, any camp, even outside. The brand never washes off. Kolima lifted his eyes at last. "I don't understand, comrade officer," he said in a dead, hollow voice. "I didn't kill anyone, and I don't know your bear." Neverov studied him for a long beat. His face soured. "Your choice," he hissed, pressing the desk buzzer. 15 days in the hole, to start. Let him think about his life. The guards folded him up again. As they shoved him out, he felt Neverov's stare on his back. Angry, maybe grudgingly respectful. Or maybe that was wishful thinking. The punishment cell measured 3 by 2, bare concrete, sweating damp, a slop bucket in the corner, a fold-down plank bed chained to the wall by day, cold gnawed to the marrow, rations once a day, 300 grams of bread and a cup of boiled water. Kolima sat on the freezing floor, back to the wall. He'd passed both tests, the thieves and the cops. He'd shown he could take a punch and keep his tongue. When he crawled out of here in 15 days, skinny and hollow, his rank in this place would be different, no longer the new fish, one of the family. But in that gelid silence, he felt no pride, no relief, just bottomless fatigue and ash on his tongue. He'd dirtied his hands not in a fight, not in heat, but as an executioner, an instrument. Somewhere deep inside, in the corner where memory of a normal life still smoldered, he understood. He'd stepped over a line today there was no coming back from. He'd made his choice. He would live with it to the end. Whatever the end was. Evening roll call had ended an hour ago. Frost tightened its grip, and the wind whining between the barracks sounded like mourning for all who'd vanished into this frozen ground. In the far corner of Barrack 107, the thieves' nook, the air was hot and stale. A single bulb, fly-specked since summer, barely peeled back the dark, catching harsh, seamed faces and the inked blue domes on backs and chests. The air hung thick as jelly, with the smells of cheap tobacco, sweat, wet wood, and a kettle of black as tar tea that barely trembled on a makeshift coil. Gray sat on the edge of a bunk, shoulder to rough wall. He wasn't master here, but neither was he treated like a guest. After that dust-up with the trustee from housekeeping, when he'd snapped the activist's arm for planting a shiv in his kit, men started watching him differently. His quiet certainty and flat, unreadable stare made even seasoned wolves keep space. An invitation to tea with Yakut, the camp's watcher, wasn't an honor. There were no honors here, only rungs, up to brief power or down into filth. Another test, this one not of muscle but of spirit. Yakut, withered, eyes reflecting the circles of hell, stirred the brew with a broken spoon. Rings of ink on his fingers told a life's worth of chapters. Lounging beside him with swagger was Kolima, the young, muscled-up incomer whose ambition showed in the way he held a cigarette. His gaze kept crossing Yakut's, and the silent clashes said everything about the under-table fight for control. Around them sat a few more. Phelan, the old drifter with a soft voice and sad eyes on his third bid. Shket, a kid barely 20, here for some stupid knife fight, looking at Yakut and Kolima with puppy awe, soaking up every word, every twitch, mistaking this charcoal purgatory for romance. "Good tea tonight," Kolima broke the hush, blowing a cloud. "Warms the soul, not like the swill those guards feed us. Out on the street now, eh?" Shket perked up, eyes shining. "Uncle Kolima, what's it like outside? For real. They say in Moscow you pulled serious jobs." Kolima smirked, basking. "You don't pull jobs, kid. You do them. Moscow's big, lots of suckers. You need a nose. Me and the boys hit a jeweler. Clean, no noise. I was, born 58. And we took 120 grand by those prices. The director didn't even squeak before the gun was to his head. Then one of ours turned, sold us for a shorter stretch. I found him later on the chain. He begged, he cried, swore the cops squeezed him, family under the boot. But the thieves' law is one for all. Betray once, die like an animal." Kolima spoke with relish, parading his ruthlessness. Gray listened, studying his face. No remorse there, pride, a predator pleased with the kill. You're young, hot, Kolima, Phelan said quietly, eyes down at his cooling tea. For you it's simple, a mark, a gun, a law. Life spins different. Kolima sneered. And what, old man? Hug him? Forgive him? Phelan lifted his head. His baked apple face was calm. Not that. I mean, how men get here. You walked in by choice. You knew the price. Me, I landed here by foolishness. First time I was 19. 47. Hungry years. My little sister was swelling with hunger. I took a sack of flour from the plant. Not for me, for her. Thought no one would see. The night watchman did. An old man barely on his feet. I shoved him. He fell, hit his head on a table corner. Dead. That's all. 10 years hard in a blink. For flour. My sister died a year after anyway, and I kept riding the chain. One bid, then another. I thought I suffered for the right cause. Then I saw there's no right here. There's only those who sit and those who sit them down. The reason, he nodded toward the fence, it stays out there with life. Silence pooled heavy. Phelan's plain, awful story was closer to the bone for 1,000 inmates than Kolima's glittering exploits. It was a story of a common man ground by the mill. Shket dropped his eyes. The shine dulled. The romance cracked. Gray watched Phelan with a trace of something. He'd seen hundreds like him, lives broken by one slip. But he also knew this. Pity is a luxury here. It kills faster than a bullet. Yakut, silent till now, set his mug down. The clink on wood rang like a shot. Foolishness, you say? His voice was quiet, but it iced spines. There's no foolishness, Phelan. There's choice. Everyone makes one. You did when you raised a hand on a man. Guard or prosecutor makes no difference. Kolima did when he stepped onto the thieves' path. Each will answer for his own. His gaze swept the circle and came to rest on Gray. You think the thieves' law is for pretty speeches at meetings? For talking circles about the code? No, the law is written in blood. Every letter paid for with lives. You want a story? I'll tell one. Not about how someone got a sentence, about how someone got erased. Yakut paused, pulled a Bellamore cigarette, worked it between knuckles turned bone and skin. Sensing the shift, Kolima leaned in with a lit match like a lackey. There was a thief in the Urals, 61, Artyom Kazansky, straight man, did time from his youth, lived by the code his whole life, crowned at 25. Everyone respected him, thieves and workers alike. His word was stronger than most men's lives. The kitty he kept to the kopeck, helped who needed, care packages, a note home, a ruble for a sick mother, a man with a capital M. Yakut drew in. The ember lit his face, corpse pale. Then we got a new ops boss, rare bastard, didn't break bones, broke souls. He started on Artyom the gentle way, special visit with a woman, relax the regime, little perks. Artyom sent him to hell, as he should. So the ops came at him sideways. Artyom had one son, 15. The ops had their cop friends outside, framed the boy, planted a knife near a murder scene, then handed Artyom a note. Either you become ours or your son follows your path, only not a thief, a punk at the bottom. Push through every press cell we own, and we'll see to it he doesn't reach 18. The room went so still you could hear a wick sputter on the hot plate and someone coughing through the wall. Even Kolima stopped smirking. Artyom turned black in one night, Yakut said, voice flat as a morgue slab. He drifted for a week like a ghost, spoke to no one, and then he broke. Started dripping our business to the ops. First the small things, who boils tea, who hides cards, then the big. He ratted out a thieves' council where they were set to judge one goat. Everyone there got thrown into the punishment block for 6 months. 2 didn't make it out. And Artyom, he got a letter from the ops, from his son. The boy wrote he'd been released, the case closed, all fine now. Yakut flicked his butt to the dirt floor and ground it out with his boot. The thieves' world is a web. Everything connects. News that Artyom had turned came from another camp a month later. No one wanted to believe it. Artyom Kazansky? Impossible. They called a council. The most respected men gathered and brought Artyom in. He stood in the middle of the barracks, eyes to the floor. They asked him one question. Was it you? He nodded. just nodded and said one word, "Son," nothing more. "You know what a thieves' trial is?" Yakut's eyes swept the frozen faces. "It isn't like the Reds. No prosecutors, no lawyers, only us. Only the code and the fact. The fact was betrayal. He gave up his own. Men died because of him. The reason was son. But the thieves' law does not recognize son, mother, wife. There is only one word, brotherhood. You're with it or against it. He chose his son. He chose the civilian's life. That meant he stopped being a thief, stopped being even a man. He became a rat. And what do we do with rats in our house?" The question hung. Shakit turned pale and clutched himself. The sentence was passed. Yakut's voice hardened to steel. Death, but not simple. Not a quiet blade in a dark corner. That would be too easy. That would be a human's death. He wasn't human anymore. He had to be punished so that anyone who even thought of that path would bleed from the thought. Yakut leaned forward, his stare pinning each man in turn. At night, when the camp slept, we took him beyond the last barracks to the old pit. A trench was ready. Shallow. A man's height. We said nothing. Set him on the edge. He didn't cry, didn't beg. He understood. Stared at the stars. Maybe he thought of his son one last time. Maybe he cursed the day he was born. Who knows? 2 of ours took his arms and legs and laid him down like a coffin. He lay back and closed his eyes. Gray felt a chill crawl his spine. He'd heard horror before, but the way Yakut told it froze the blood. Yakut raised a hand, fingers spread. We began to cover him, alive. Shovels through dirt, first on the legs, then the chest. He didn't move. Only when the first cold clumps hit his face did he twitch and open his eyes. There wasn't fear in them, only surprise, as if up to the last moment he didn't believe we'd do it. When the soil closed his mouth, he started to moan, low, from under the ground. We kept throwing. Each shovel blow made the sound duller, then gone. We leveled the pit, tamped it, and walked away, as if nothing happened. In the morning, the ops raised an alarm. They searched for Artyom Kazansky, found nothing, wrote it up as an escape. We knew where he was. He's still there, in his private grave. A lesson for all. Yakut finished and lifted his empty cup again. Dead silence held the barracks. Even the wind seemed to stop and listen. The tale was told. The lesson delivered. Gray looked at Yakut and understood this wasn't just a story. It was a warning to him, to Kolima, to Shkat, to everyone. A display of absolute power and a law harsher than the state's. The state can strip freedom or life, but it leaves a name, a grave, a memory. The thieves' law erases you from being. It turns you into nothing, a nameless lump of frozen earth. Kolima cleared his throat to hide his nerves. Hard, he managed, but right. A rat gets a rat's end. His voice had lost the earlier swagger. In one story, Yakut put him in place, showing the gap between a street hitter and a true keeper of the code. Gray said nothing. He had his own thoughts. His road here wasn't roses either. He'd chosen, more than once, and he knew the price. Yakut's story revealed a worse face of that price. Not just life or death. The price of a soul. You pay it daily, hourly, breathing this cursed camp air. He looked at his hands. They were bloody too, and he knew if it came to it, he'd take a shovel without a blink, because there was only one way to survive here. Be as merciless as the world itself. Become part of a law written in blood, or be buried alive beneath its ice. His tea had long gone cold, but he raised the cup and took a long pull, bitter, astringent. The taste of this life, the taste of a path you don't turn from. The air in the work zone rang with cold and things unsaid. Evening frost stabbed through layers, but no one shivered. Movements were spare. Looks were heavy as wet snow, caking the shop roofs. In the dead strip between the carpentry shed and the tinsmith's, time stopped. Only far-off dog bark on the fence and the creak of frozen gravel under boots. Tower lights cut the dark into razor slices of wire, rusted drums, and hunched silhouettes. 20-some men, 2 walls of gray jackets facing off. 10 paces between them. 10 paces longer than all the life before this camp. Gray stood a step behind the cross, to the right. He felt Kolchak's back tense to his left. A living wall ready to slide. Gray didn't breathe. He stared at the opposite line. At its head stood Dry, broad-shouldered, bull-necked, stuffed into the collar of an almost new jacket. Dry was from the bitch caste, one of those who'd sided with the Reds in the war to beat thieves. Old grudges had cooled by the 60s, but the taste remained. He wasn't a crown thief, but he'd built a pack of wild cards who spat on the old code and recognized one thing: force. They loved to show it. Between the walls, on the no-man's strip, a young man knelt. Chiswick. Dumb, terrified. He shook so hard his teeth seemed about to chip. No tears. They'd frozen somewhere inside into needles of ice. Rat work ran through Gray's mind. The foulest. A few days ago, the workers' kitty vanished. Not the thieves' fund, that stayed under watch, but the men's kitty. Coins scraped from care packages and parcels to buy tea and smokes for those with no one left outside. A paltry sum, 30 rubles, maybe 40. The money didn't matter. What mattered was you reached into the pocket of your own, those who eat from your pot and sleep on the bunks beside you. It's like robbing a beggar on the church steps, worse than killing. Killing can be by cause, by rough justice. Petty theft from your own is always vile. Chiswick was Dry's errand boy. Ran messages, shined boots, and licked one too many. They pinned him quick. Caught him in the drying room, trying to stash a pack of fresh smokes and 3 rubles. Workers grabbed him, but didn't touch him. They went to the watcher. To the cross. The cross took 1 step forward, just one. But the gap between the sides seemed to halve. He was not tall, wiry, but granite certainty radiated from him, making Dry's bull bulk look padded and fake. The cross stopped, hands sunk in worn jacket pockets, and looked at Dry, not at Chiswick, at the owner. "Evening, Dry." The cross's voice was soft, almost indifferent, but here in the dead zone, it cut like a blade. "We need to talk, about your boy." Dry snorted a plume of steam and stepped up, trying to copy the cross's calm, failing. Aggressive Polish bled through his moves. "And to you, Cross. My boy, he's alley trash, underfoot. What happened?" The lie was thick and sticky. Everyone knew Chiswick was Dry's. He was trying to wash his hands. First move on the board. "What happened is your pup mixed up the lines," the Cross said, voice level. "He hit the worker's kitty. You know what the life says about that?" Dry curled his lip. "What was in that kitty? A pack of shag and 3 pennies? They squeal like they robbed the state bank. He's a kid. It happens. Let it slide this once." Gray felt men behind the Cross tighten. Let it slide for stealing from your own. Not a defense, a challenge. A spit in the face of the rules holding this place together. Dry was probing for weakness. If the Cross swallowed it, cracks would show, and Dry's lawlessness would flood in. The Cross was silent for a long minute. He looked at Dry with no anger, no hate. Only a cold, heavy measure, like a butcher weighing where to strike. "It happens," he said at last, even softer, even more dangerous. "Civilians trip, devils trip, men do not. A man minds himself. If he won't, we help him." His eyes narrowed. "You're not speaking for him, Dry. You're hitching yourself to a filthy act. You want rats digging burrows in our house? Today he takes a worker's last. Tomorrow you take mine." The framing was lethal. The Cross moved the target from the petty thief to Dry himself, forcing a choice. Stand with decent men or with rats. "Don't twist my words," Dry barked, feeling the corner. "Don't match me with that pup. I said my word. Punish, but don't break him. Snap his hand so he remembers. Enough. A concession, but not enough. A broken hand treats flesh. This stain was on the soul. Plaster doesn't fix that." "No, Dry." The Cross shook his head slowly. "Not enough. You pulled him close. You answer for him. Either you say here, and now he's nothing to you. He's scum, and then the measure for scum is full. Or he's yours, and the measure is yours too. For warming a rat, for covering one. Choose." The air went thick as jelly. Dry's men shifted, trading looks. They saw their boss losing. Not by muscle, by word, by the logic of the code. If Dry kept backing Chiswick, he equated himself with a rat. If he threw him away, he showed weakness, couldn't protect even his errand boy. Either way, defeat. Dry flushed dark. He glanced from the Cross to the shivering Chiswick. Rage flickered. He'd been outplayed by the old thief. "To hell with him," Dry hissed, eyes dropping. He spat on the frozen ground. "He's not mine. Do what you want." Sentence. Chisik heard it. He lifted his head. Despair flooded his face, bottomless, raw, and Gray felt a twist in his gut. Sold for 30 pieces of a camp boss's silver. He shuffled on his knees to Dry's boots, clutching at a pant leg. "Boss, don't!" Dry shoved him away with disgust. "Get off me, vermin!" The cross nodded, calm, businesslike. Turning a dull page, he faced his own line. Kolchak. Kolchak stepped forward. From nowhere, a shank flashed in his fist. Not a knife. A 4-edged steel spike torn from a bunk frame, wrapped in filthy rag. "The proletariat's weapon," they joked in the barracks. Chisik whimpered, writhing on the ground like a wounded bird. "Don't, brothers, please. I'll give it back. All of it." "Too late," the cross said, not to Chisik, but to all within earshot, so friend and foe would take the lesson. "You didn't take money. You took trust. It doesn't come back. You put your hand into the souls of men who believed you. There's one measure for that." Kolchak grabbed Chisik by the scruff and yanked him upright to his knees. With the other hand, he seized the left palm and pressed it flat to the ground. Small palm, almost a child's, nails black with ground in dirt. "No!" Chisik screamed, but the wind's roar between the sheds swallowed it. Kolchak didn't hesitate. He raised the spike and drove it down. With a hard crack, it punched through the hand and into the frozen earth, pinning it fast. Chisik's scream pitched into an animal wail. He jerked, trying to rip free. The steel held. Gray tasted bile. He'd seen fights. Men beaten halfway to death. This was different. Cold. Methodical. A punishment. "And that's for the hand you put where it shouldn't go," the cross said, eyes on the nailed palm. "Now, for the rot in your head." Without pulling the spike, Kolchak reached into his coat and took out a small canvas pouch, the one workers used for their kitty. Empty now. He untied it, scooped a handful of dirty ice gravel from the ground, and stepped to Chisik's face. "Eat!" he growled. Chisik thrashed his head. Spit and sobs flew. "I won't!" Kolchak fisted his hair, wrenched the head back, pried the jaw open, and shoved the frozen muck in. Chisik gagged, coughed, tried to spit, but Kolchak's iron fingers held him. "Eat, rat. Eat the ground men walk on." Dry's men watched, faces blanched. Dry turned away, pretending to study a tower light. He'd lost, and now he had to watch the cost of losing. When the pouch was empty, Kolchak let go. Chisik fell on his side, retching mud and blood, choking, convulsing. "And now," the cross said evenly, as if nothing had happened, "so others remember. So any man who looks at you knows what you are." Kolchak ripped the spike free. A rag of flesh clung to the tip. He tossed it aside with a ring against a rusty drum. He wiped his hands on his jacket, then hauled Chisik up by the hair again. The boy had gone slack, only a thin whimper left. Kolchak set the point to the forehead. Gray shut his eyes, then forced them open. You had to look, to understand, to remember. Kolchak didn't cut deep. He pressed and drew 3 short vertical lines across the skin. Rat. At first the marks were white. Slowly they filled with red. It was done. Kolchak flung the spike away and stood beside the cross. Chisik lay on the ground, maimed, humiliated, broken. No longer a man. From now on, he was the lowest caste. You didn't sit with him. Didn't share a spoon. Even speaking to him was beneath you. His place was by the latrine till term's end, if he lived that long. Most don't. Not from wounds alone, but from the total contempt. They die from the inside. "Talk's over," the cross said to Dry. "I trust everyone understands." Dry said nothing. He shot the cross a venomous look, turned, barked, moved, and strode off. His pack followed, careful not to look at the heap on the ground. Their retreat looked like flight. When they vanished behind a shed, the cross turned to his own. "We're done. Don't touch him. Tell the workers justice was served." Men dispersed in silence. Only the cross, Kolchak, and Gray remained. The cross stepped to Gray and set a heavy hand on his shoulder. "See?" he asked quietly. Gray nodded, words jammed in his throat. "Remember, Gray, order stands on fear, Not fear of me, not fear of the guards, fear of lawlessness. A man must fear becoming filth more than he fears death. We aren't judges, we're the wall, the last wall between this house and chaos. Remove us, and the camp drowns in blood. Men get cut for a pack of smokes. Today we didn't punish a boy. We showed this house has a foundation, and it holds. Come, it's cold. They walked back to the living zone. Gray moved as if his legs were numb. In his mind, the pictures stuttered, a hand staked to frozen ground, a mouth stuffed with dirt, 3 bloody strokes on a forehead. He heard the cross's words, the last wall. He'd always thought the thieves' law meant fairness, honor. Today he saw its underside. It wasn't a law of honor, it was a law of survival, brutal, bloody, merciless. But the only one that worked in this hell. The barracks were warm and smelled of cheap tobacco. Men sat on bunks, murmuring. When the Cross and Gray entered, talk died. Dozens of eyes fixed on them, wordless questions in their shine. The Cross walked to his corner and sat. Gray stopped in the aisle. "It's settled with the rat," he said, voice low. "He won't touch anyone again." A sigh rolled through the room. Someone crossed himself. Someone whispered, "Thank God." Gray reached his bunk and dropped onto it in his clothes. He shut his eyes, but the dark brought no peace. It flashed the 3 red strokes on Chizik's brow again and again. The price of order. For the first time in his life, Gray wondered if that price was too high. No answer came. There were no answers here. Only rules, and the price you pay, either for keeping them or for breaking them. No third option. The price is always blood. Someone else's or your own. The boiler room was the camp's heart, its filthy, heat-breathing gut. Here, among mounds of coal dust and rusted pipes, where the air was as thick as jelly from steam and sweat, fates were decided. By day the stoked fires belonged to the shamed and the punished, shoveling coal into the insatiable mouths of the furnaces. By night, the boiler room turned into a chapel of thieves' justice. A single dim bulb under a wire cage cut islands of light out of the dark and lit a dozen harsh, weather-burned faces. Shadows writhed on the walls like the souls of the damned. Gray stood by the wall and forced his breathing to stay even. After that run-in with Sukari's boys, when he hadn't flinched and sank a shiv into a bull's thigh, his standing had changed. They'd stopped eyeing him like a slab of meat in a market. In the thieves' eyes, he now saw cautious respect. "Watch how we settle matters," Yaponchik, the zone's top thief, had told him. Good for the head. It wasn't a request. In the center of the circle, on his knees, was Colt. A week ago he'd been cocky, sure of himself, ran the card tables and small-time contraband. Now he looked like cornered game. Coal-dusted face gone pale, his eyes skittered from face to face, hunting for a drop of mercy. Beside him, on the filthy floor, lay a tight canvas sugar sack. The obshchak, a sacred thing. Yaponchik sat on an upside-down crate, casual in posture, but wound like a spring, short, wiry. His pale, near-colorless eyes held a quiet hypnosis. He rolled a hand-rolled cigarette between thin fingers without lighting it. Next to him stood Beast, his right hand, a man mountain with split knuckles and an empty, unreadable stare. "So, Colt?" Yaponchik's voice came out quiet, almost bored, yet it sliced the boiler room's boom like a razor. "The people are here, they're listening. Speak. How'd you get yourself here? You understand the charge." Colt's head jerked up. "I get it, Yaponchik. I do. But it's a setup, I swear. Slander. Sukari's got a grudge, so he's weaving lies. I never touched the obshchak." "Didn't touch it, huh?" Hromoy, an old lag with a mangled leg, stepped in. He kept the kitty safe. "Then where'd the 300 go from the last drop?" 3 crisp hundreds. "They're not in the bag, and in the last 3 days no one touched it but you and me." "I didn't take it." "So you did? Maybe you stashed it and pinned it on me?" Colt's voice squealed to a falsetto. Beast shifted a foot, and Colt shut up, shrinking. "Don't smear Hromoy," Yaponchik said evenly. "He's watched that kitty 15 years. If he were a rat, his bones would have been whitening in permafrost long ago. You, Colt, you overplayed your hand. Card debts. You lost more than you had. 500 you owed the other barracks handler. You paid it back. Where'd you get it?" Silence. Colt's chest heaved. Sweat cut pale lines through the coal on his temples. They sent a care through a guard. There was a note. They'd pass it, he muttered. Yapanchik smiled with one corner of his mouth. What note? From who? We know every lane on this map. No care package showed for you in 2 months. You're lying. And you don't even blush. Think we're suckers fresh off mama's milk? We asked that guard. For a slice of his side hustle, he sings better than a canary. He passed you nothing. You gave him 100 to keep his mouth shut if it came to it. Silence settled heavy. The boilers thudded and a drip ticked from a rusted pipe. Drip, 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 counting down seconds. You didn't just steal from your own. Yapanchik rose, walked to Colt, and peered into his eyes. Colt tried to look away. Worse. Over your debt you sick Sukari's boys on the 7th barrack. Blood spilled. One man's in the infirmary, maybe won't make it. All because one rat decided he was above the rest. You broke the prime law. You bit the vein that feeds us all. He stepped back, sat again, and swept the room with his gaze. Anyone speak for Colt? Anyone think he's right and we're wrong? No one moved, no one breathed. So no, Yapanchik said. Colt, last word. Colt raised his head. No hope left, only animal terror. Yapanchik, brothers, forgive me. Devil took me. I'll make it right. Double, don't kill me. I'll work, I'll slave, just let me live. My mother, my sister. You should have thought of them before you put your hand in the common, Yapanchik cut in, voice hard as steel. And as for making it right, you can't return what you took. You didn't take money, you took trust. Without it, we're just a pack of jackals. He glanced at Beast. Take full measure. Beast nodded. 2 more lifers rose. Sekich pulled a square of canvas from his shirt. Colt understood. He thrashed and screamed, trying to crawl. Don't! Brothers, don't! The cry snapped off when Beast's fist tapped the base of his skull. Colt went slack. They gagged him, bound his hands. His eyes, huge, pleading, locked on Gray. Silent, begging. Gray looked away. Nausea rose, but he knew it. Weakness now was a warrant on his own head. Move him, Yapanchik ordered and finally struck a match. Flame lit his face like a mask of some old god. They dragged Colt to the back door that opened to the dump and the construction yard. You're with us, Beast rasped to Gray in passing. Gray's heart dropped, but he nodded and followed. The night was cold and starred. After the boiler room, the air burned his lungs. The camp slept. Only the snow's squeak under boots and distant dogs on the fence line. Searchlights sliced the dark, carving dead pools of light and deep, impenetrable shadows. They kept to the shadows, silent. Beast and Seacatch hauled the near-moaning Colt, 2 more behind. Gray and Yapanchik brought up the rear. They reached the new barracks site. Behind stacks of frozen planks yawned a foundation pit. Shovels lay on the rim. Beast and Seacatch pitched Colt into the hole like a sack. He thudded onto frozen soil. They jumped down and set him on his knees. He mumbled through the gag. His body rattled with shakes. Thieves' law is harsh, but it's fair, Yapanchik said quietly at Gray's side, speaking as much to himself as to Gray, nailing down the right's inevitability. A man gets what he earned. He betrayed us. He died when he reached into what's ours. We're only executing the verdict. Beast pulled the gag. Last word, Rat. What do you tell the thieves' world? Mercy, Colt croaked, foam at his lips. I'll pay it back. Bury me waist deep. I'll work it off. Too late, Beast cut him off. He looked up. Yapanchik gave the smallest nod. They began. 2 men took shovels. The first slab of frozen, snow-clotted dirt slammed into Colt's legs. His howl wasn't human. A mortally wounded animal. Remember this, Yapanchik said in a lecturer's calm. Punishment must be certain and instructive. Stab him, and tomorrow another rat will hatch. But if men know they're buried alive for this, the urge dries up. Fear guards better than any wall. Dirt flew. It covered his shins, then thighs. Colt sobbed, begged, cursed, called saints and devils. The voices dulled. Up to his waist. He tried to claw it away, but Beast and Sekich held him iron tight. Gray watched, forced himself to. He saw terror curdle to madness, the gasp when another load hit Colt's chest, cries broken into rasps. When dirt reached the neck, Beast and Sekich climbed out. 4 shovels above now. Colt no longer screamed. He only wheezed and coughed, twisting his head. His eyes bulged at the black sky scattered with cold stars. "Finish," Beast ordered. They shoveled fast, feral, dull thumps, then duller, then none. Minutes later, a small mound rose where a living man's head had been. They stood in silence. Beast pulled a plank over and tamped the earth until fresh spoil vanished. They scattered construction trash on top. Done. The man named Colt no longer existed. He'd dissolved into the camp's dirt. "Let's go," Yapanchik said, turning away. He smoked his roll-up to the butt and flicked it onto the fresh ground. For a blink, the ember glowed and died. They filed back the way they'd come. Gray walked as if in a trance. In his ears, the thud of frozen soil, Colt's last gasp. He felt that cold on his own skin, imagined it choking his mouth and nose. Back in the barrack, he sat on his bunk. Hands shaking, he hid them under the blanket. Quiet. Some men slept, some pretended. Everyone knew, no one asked. Part of life here. Brutal, ugly, the only way it worked. Half an hour later, the door creaked. Yapanchik entered, sat beside Gray. "Hard?" he asked softly. Gray said nothing. "Get used to it," Yapanchik went on. "That's our life. Either you judge or you're judged. No third way. Colt chose. He decided his itch outranked the common cause. The law thought different. We're not beasts, not sadists. We're guardians. Guardians of the code. Without it, in this hell, nothing human remains. Only livestock gnawing a neighbor for half a loaf. We want to stay human. Our way. The thieves' way." He paused then. "Tonight you didn't see death. You saw our justice. It smells of fear and frozen earth. But it exists. While it exists, so do we. Sleep. Tomorrow brings new questions." He left. Gray was alone with the dark and the face of a man buried into the foundation of a new barrack. He closed his eyes and saw it again. He knew the image would never leave. That was the price of one more rung on the ladder. And there would be more rungs, each cost higher. He lay listening to the camp's hush, and it seemed that under the thin snow and rubble, the ground itself moaned. Or maybe it was his own soul. The barrack silence was deceptive, like the still ocean before a squall. It didn't soothe. It pressed on the ears and forced you to parse every rustle. Outside, the dogs keened in a long, flat line. The guards' boots creaked the planks on the tower. Inside, under the lone bulb webbed with dust, 100 men breathed the same stale air steeped in shag, sweat, rot, and unspoken fear. Not peace, expectation of trouble. Yakut sat on the lower bunk in the thieves' corner, patiently grinding the handle of a spoon against a stone nub, coaxing a stiletto from cheap metal. The scrape was barely audible. On the next bunk, Greek lay half reclined, arms folded, long aristocratic fingers crossed, eyes on the ceiling but mind miles away. Sakhalin, master of this corner and the zone's watcher, sat opposite, back to a wall scrawled with a crude sailing ship. He did nothing, just sat and looked. His still gaze thickened the air. Here the invisible wall that fenced them from the men and the shamed made even the breathing different. This was where the law lived, not the one prosecutors wrote, but the one carved by generations of drifters into their flesh and souls. Simpler and scarier than any state code. Snake arrived without a sound, living up to his name, stopping 2 steps from Sakhalin, sharp cheekbones, blank face, drill bit eyes holding worry. "Sakhalin, we need to talk," he mouthed, barely above a whisper. Sakhalin didn't move, only shifted his gaze. "Speak." "The kitty's not balancing," Snake went on, just as low. "Short again, a little, but it's the 3rd time this month. Small, but a pattern." Greek sat up, elbows on knees. Yakut's file stopped. Ice fell over the corner, the obshchak, sacred. Not even a crown thief had the right to skim it for himself. Blood of the Brotherhood, their insurance, their help for families outside, their bribe fund for guards. To touch it was to stick a knife in your own mother's back. "Who holds the bag?" Sakhalin's voice was flat. That made it worse. "Speyer," Snake said. I nudged him, swore up and down he's clean, miscounted. But his eyes run. I saw extra sugar on his bunk. Tea. From where? He doesn't gamble. No one sends him grev from outside. Sakhalin nodded like he'd heard what he already knew. Yakut, he said without looking. I'm here, I answered, laying the shiv aside. Step up. I moved closer. He looked straight through me. No anger, no surprise. Just the slow, ancient math of a hunter. You heard. Looks like we've bred a rat. The word rat sounded like a gavel. In here there was no worse insult, no more final verdict. A rat steals from his own, eats from the common pot, and then robs the men he eats with. Not a thief, a traitor. You know what they do to rats? Greek slipped in, voice soft, teacher gentle. They don't just kill. A clean kill's an honor in a fair fight. Rats get crushed like lice. No honor, no pity, no memory, so others don't even think of it. The obshchak is our spine, Sakhalin said, eyes still on me. Break it and we all drop. Under guards or under punks. The officer's only waiting for us to rip each other's throats out. That's why the charge is triple for every kopeck. It's not money or smoke. It's trust. Trade trust for a pouch of tea and you're not a man. You're filth. He let that soak in. Snake, he said, turning his head at last. Send your runner. Lift Speier's mattress. Quiet. No stir. Bring Speier here. Softly. Tell him we need a word. Snake nodded and dissolved into the gloom. Greek drew a roll-up from his boot top and kneaded it. We had a case in the crosses back in '56, he started lightly, like a bedtime tale. A straight Joe with us. Pate. Talked thieves of slang like he breathed. We let him hold the kitty in the cell. Then things started to vanish. Small, but it added up. We dug in. The toad had his wife on the outside, taking drops through a bent guard. He skimmed the kitty and sent it to her a spoon at a time. Thought no one would notice. Greek lit up and exhaled a bitter cloud. When we pinned him, he went to his knees, crying. Snot all over his face. He said it was for a sick daughter's medicine, that the thieves' way wasn't foreign to him, that life had forced his hand. You know what an old-school thief, Medved of Ufa, told him? He said, you stole from our children in here, from the camp's orphans. You stole that last piece of sugar that's the only joy they get. You stole their joy, and there's no forgiveness for that. Greek flicked his cigarette butt into a dark corner. They didn't beat him. They dropped him in status right there in the cell, then handed him to the ops as a snitch. Said he was feeding them our meetings. They moved him to the press cell. 2 days later, he was hanging from a bedsheet. No one pitied him. Not a soul. Because he wasn't a man anymore. He was a rat. I listened and felt a chill crawl my spine. These weren't empty threats. This was the law, alive, breathing, about to pronounce itself here and now. A few minutes later, they brought in Speier to the thieves' corner, a wiry man around 40 with permanently spooked eyes. He always kept to the shadows, spoke little, worked wordlessly in the workshops, and among the thieves he passed as ours, though not an authority. 2 sturdy lads escorted him. He tried to sit steady, but a fine tremor in his hands betrayed him. You sent for me, Sakhalin? He asked, fighting the quiver in his voice. Sit, Sakhalin said, nodding at an upturned crate. Speier sat. His gaze bounced from Sakhalin to Greek to me, hunting for a friendly face and finding only cold, weighing stares. Speier, you've been doing time with us for years, Sakhalin began from afar. You know our order. You know what's sacred to us. I do, Speier forced out. Good. Then it'll be easier to explain where the money from the kitty went. Speier's face went ash gray. I don't know, Sakhalin. Maybe I miscounted. Too much going on. Head spins. Miscounted? Greek repeated softly. 3 times in a month, so you can't count? We handed you the Brotherhood's lifeline and you can't tally kopecks? I'll recount everything. It'll match to the kopeck, Speier babbled, voice breaking to a squeal. Give me time. I'll check it all. Just then the same runner Snake had sent returned. He stepped to Sakhalin and, without a word, held out a greasy handkerchief. Sakhalin unfolded it. Inside lay a tightly rolled scrap of paper. A kipyat note. Sakhalin opened it in silence. The barrack went so still you could hear someone's teeth chattering at the far end. Lyubka, take 30 rubles from Aunt Galia. Tell her it's from me. Kisses. Your Kolya. Sakhalin read slowly and clearly. Kolya was Speier's given name. Aunt Galia, wife of the sergeant on gate duty. I'm not mistaken. Speier stared at the note like a rabbit at a boa. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came. The pieces clicked into place. He'd been skimming the kitty and passing it out through a guard to his wife. Not for fortunes or gold hills, for a pitiful 30 rubles. A pouch of tea and a lump of sugar. The price of betrayal, comically small. "Cat got your tongue, Kolya?" Greek asked. His tone raised gooseflesh on my arms. "You send kisses to Lyubka, but who sends greetings to the boys in the hole? Who tosses them smoke? You? You pulled the last piece out of their mouths." Speyer finally found his voice. He slid off the crate to his knees, hands out to Sakhalin. "Brothers, thieves, don't kill me. The devil led me astray. I'm guilty. I'll pay it back. Double. I'll break my back on the line. I'll return it all." "You'll return it?" Sakhalin smiled. It was a terrible smile. "And trust? Will you return that? How do we know you won't sell us to the officer tomorrow for an extra ladle? You already sold us, all of us, for 30 mangy rubles." He turned to me. "Yakut, you're young, but you're with us. You want to live as a man, the thieves' way? You say it. What does the law do with a rat?" This was my test, my own exam before the Brotherhood's face. I looked at Speer trembling in the dust, his face slick with tears and snot. There was nothing human left in it, only animal terror, and I realized I felt no pity, no mercy, only disgust. He'd struck his own name out of the human ledger. I met Sakhalin's eyes. "A rat gets a rat's death," I said, flat and clear. Sakhalin nodded slowly. "Correct." He stood, final, inevitable, like death itself. "Take him!" Speer screamed. Not a man's cry, a trapped animal's squeal. They jammed a filthy rag in his mouth at once. 2 bulls hoisted him by the arms and dragged him to the latrine at the barracks end. No one among the 100 inmates, pretending to sleep or to mind their own, turned a head. The unwritten law of survival. See nothing, hear nothing, say nothing. Everyone understood. Today it's him, tomorrow it's you. Greek lit another smoke. "That's it, Yakut. The law is simple. Don't work for the master. Don't keep a family in the usual sense. Your family is the Brotherhood. Don't take weapons from the state. Don't serve in the army. Don't cooperate with cops in any form. Don't steal from your own. Don't insult another inmate for nothing, especially a drifter. Card debt is sacred. Spirit says do. You do. You promise. You die to fulfill it." He talked on, and from the far corner came damp, muted thuds and throttled wheezing. "And punishments? Also simple," Greek said, watching the ember. "For insults, they can clip your ears, strip your status, make you a man. Insult a thief, you can lose your life. Fail to pay card debt, they'll drop you. Work with the admin, punk cast, death, no options. But the vilest death is for ratting. It strikes the heart of our world, Brotherhood." The blows stopped. The same crushing quiet fell. A minute later, the 2 enforcers returned. Their faces were blank. "It's done," one said to Sakhalin. "Hanging in the John. Looks like he did it himself." Sakhalin nodded. "Right. Let the guards find him in the morning. Chalk it up to homesick blues." He sat again, took a deck, and began laying a solitaire. Greek finished his roll-up. Life in the thieves' corner slid back into its rut, like nothing had happened. Like a man's fate hadn't just been decided here. Like he hadn't been beaten to death in the toilet. I sat on my bunk, my hands trembled slightly. I picked up my shiv and kept drawing metal on stone. The scrape sounded deafening in the new hush. I stared at Sakhalin's back, his broad shoulders. Today I hadn't just watched the law at work. I'd become part of it. I'd spoken a verdict. There was no going back. Greek noticed my state and murmured, so only I could hear. "Don't dwell." He made his choice the moment he reached into the kitty. We didn't kill him. He condemned himself. Our world is cruel, Yakut, but it is honest. Here everyone gets what he's earned. Remember that. Honesty. That's our code. Brutal, bloody, but honest. I nodded without looking up. The stink from the latrine seemed stronger, braided with the smell of fear and newly spilled blood. I understood this smell would follow me forever. The smell of the law. The price paid by anyone who chooses to live under it. And the price isn't 30 rubles. The price is life itself. Yours, and not only yours. The siren wailed off schedule, not at 6 on the dot, but earlier, around 4 when sleep is deepest, thick as bog. The shriek tore into Barrack 86's black cold like a blade. It didn't wake you. It flung you out of sleep as if from a warm hut onto bare ice. An instant of animal silence after the first blast blew apart in the clatter of the bar. The door smashed open so hard it slammed the wall and knocked off plaster. In the doorway, silhouettes against the flood of the tower's searchlight. Guards. Not the usual 3 for a check. A dozen. Helmets, batons. Behind them, shepherds straining leads, choking on their low, wet growl. Up! Raid! Face to the floor! The detail leader roared. A bull-necked warrant officer with a face carved from frozen wood. The air filled with wet dog, cheap tobacco, and that special acrid fear that leaks from men in uniform who feel untouchable. Arkin jerked upright on his bunk. His heart pounded at his throat like a hammer on an anvil. This wasn't a routine sweep. Those were lazy daytime box-checking things. This was punishment. But for what? The conclave? For Kaban getting knifed? For the thieves reconsolidating under Yakut after the old patriarch's death? For their monolith? On the floor, I said. A guard smashed his baton against the bunk's steel post near Arkan's head. The ring stabbed the ears. Men cursed, stumbled in the dark, and spilled onto the cold, filthy floor. Muffled groans. Someone was too slow and took one in the ribs. Arkan lay down, hands laced behind his head. His cheek felt the icy planks, steeped in damp, bleach, and the sweat of hundreds. The sack began. This wasn't a search, it was destruction. They weren't after shivs or cards. They ripped mattresses, booted what little men had from lockers, trampled family photos. One found a stash of tea, dumped the precious sapphire on the floor, ground it under heel with relish. Dogs spurred on, sniffed every corner, snarled at prone bodies. Arkin didn't move. He'd learned that long ago, in interrogations, in the hole. Go still, go inward, turn to stone. Any movement, any look, provocation. To them you're not human, you're material, meat. The less life you show, the less fun they have beating it out of you. Greek lay near him, breathing even, almost silent. His face was a mask. He'd seen hundreds of these. Just another page in the endless war. Thieves versus cops. No armistice. What's this? Crowed a young sergeant. He dragged a tidy wrapped bundle from under Greek's bunk, unrolled it. Chess. Pieces carved from bread, hardened on a bulb to bone color. Art. Greek had shaped them for months. Didn't get your fill of toy soldiers, Grandpa? The sergeant sneered and crushed the White Queen in his fist. He flung the rest to the floor and ground them under his boot, slow and methodical. Arkan felt ice knot in his gut. He saw the back of Greek's head twitch. The old man stayed silent. A word here was suicide. Smashed chess and lost talk to the outside hour were nothing compared to a shot while escaping or a night in the press cell. The price of breathing was humiliation. The sack ran an hour. The barrack looked like ruins. Everything that made the meager life of hundreds was broken, stomped, desecrated. When the guards finally left and the door slammed, no one moved for minutes. Only the ragged saw of breath filled the hush. Yakut got up first. His thieves' corner had been ravaged extra hard. He scanned the wreck in silence. The usually calm face was granite now. Everyone alive? Quiet, but every ear caught it. Someone groaned. Someone's rib cracked. A couple had bloodied heads, but alive. Lift the wounded. Greek you? The old thief rose slowly, brushing breadcrumbs from his clothes, what was left of his chest. Alive, Yakut. That's bread, he said. He didn't look at the trampled pieces. To look is to concede defeat. A thief can't afford that. The door opened again. A single guard stood there. Arkanov, outside, with your things. Arkan's heart missed a beat. With your things. It could mean anything. Transfer, the whole, or worse. A red camp where goats and punks rule. He stood, tied up the few scraps that survived. Spare underwear, a tin cup. Yakut came to him. Hold fast, brother, he said low. Whatever it is, don't stall. We'll find where they take you. Arkan nodded. He caught Greek's eye. In the old man's gaze, no pity, no fear, only stern recognition. Remember who you are, that look said. 2 escorts walked him across the zone. The air bit the lungs. The eastern sky just pinked a dirty rose. The camp, usually buzzing like a hive, lay dead quiet. The sack hit every barrack, a planned action. The regime chief flexing ownership. They didn't take him to the hold or the gate, they took him to admin. Office 7, the operations officer's lair. Inside was warm, strong tobacco and fresh coffee. Behind a heavy oak desk sat Major Belkovich, mid-40s, fine, almost scholarly features. Tunic pressed razor sharp, nothing like a typical camp thug. His eyes held a cold, analytic mind, a more dangerous enemy than any baton-swinging warrant. Sit, Arkhanov. Belkovich nodded to the chair, voice soft, coaxing. Coffee? No. As you wish. Arkhan perched on the edge and kept quiet. Rule 1 with the op. Speak less, listen more. Every word will be used. Rough night, Belkovich sipped porcelain. Disorder. I hate disorder. So does Moscow. And we've had disorder lately, Arkhanov. Deaths, councils, a new king, yes, Yakut, strong authority. Proper. Too proper. He paused, studying Arkan. You're his right hand. I'm not wrong. After you helped him remove Kaban, don't make that face, Arkhanov. I know everything in this zone. Who breathes down whose neck? Who owes who? Who hates who? My job is to know. Arkan said nothing. Cold spread inside. The op wasn't bluffing. He knew, which meant they had a rat in their circle, someone piping him intel. Look at the board, Arkhanov. Belkovich picked up a pencil and sketched on a page. We are administration, law, order. You are thieves' world. Ponyatya. Chaos. We had parity. The old patriarch was predictable. He held the zone, but stayed out of our business. We stayed out of his. Everyone was fine. He set the pencil down, eyes on Arkan. But Yakut came, young, aggressive. He wants not a zone, but a thieves' state. Unify everyone under one idea. That, Arkhanov, is politics, and politics here is my brief. I don't need a strong thieves' power, he continued. I need it fractured, weak, managed. I need you gnawing one another like spiders in a jar, coming to me to snitch on each other. Yakut ruins that. He builds a monolith. And you, Arkhanov, are one of his keystones. He rose, went to the window. The zone sprawled in gray dawn. I could break you, easily. I have all the tools. The press cell, for instance. You know what that is? Not just a room for beatings. No. They lock you in with ex-thieves, fallen ones, men who once lived by the code and betrayed it. They hate your kind with a special heat, because you are their past. They won't break you with batons. They'll break you morally, drop you in status, make you do things you'll never crawl back from. After a week, you'll come here on your knees and sign whatever I put in front of you. You'll tell me everything I ask. Belkovich turned, calm face, almost friendly. But I don't want that. You're not stupid, Arkhanov. I read your case. 10 years for robbery, caught sloppy. On the outside, you weren't a nobody. You've got a head. I'm offering a deal. He sat again. Yakut must vanish, not physically. He must fall, lose face, be unmasked. I want your help. Arkan raised his eyes for the first time. I'm no punk, Comrade Major. Belkovich smirked. I'm not asking you to become a snitch. I'm asking you to choose. Look around. Yakut builds his empire on bones. Today Kaban, tomorrow someone else. You live in a constant war. He pushes you against us. The administration? How does that end? With nights like this. Tomorrow I shut the kiosk, cut off Grev from outside. The day after, riots. And riots mean blood, corpses. Believe me, the first underbullets won't be thieves. They'll be the common men. Yakut builds a paradise for thieves on a hell for everyone else. Is that what you want? He spoke logically, persuasively. He struck at the tender spots. Arkan had thought the same himself, the price ordinary inmates paid for the thieves' idea. What do I get in return? Arkan asked, surprised by his own voice. He wasn't going to agree. He was buying time, probing the ops game. Life, Belkovich answered simply. A quiet life. I transfer you to another camp, lighter regime, library job. In a couple of years, you're out on parole. You forget this like a bad dream. You start over. You're not old. 32, life ahead of you. Stay with Yakut and think. He's a crown thief. His road is prison, camp, death. He drags everyone near him along, including you. Your road with him is either a knife from rivals or the firing squad from us. No third option. The major fell silent, letting the words sink. The office filled with a tombstone stillness. Arkin felt like a wolf in a trap. Any move only tightens the snare. Agree, and he dies as a thief and as a man, betraying everything he believed, betraying those who trusted him. Refuse, and he signs his own death warrant. Belkovich wasn't the forgiving kind. I need to think, Arkan forced out. Think, Belkovich nodded. You have 3 days. They'll take you to the punishment block, solitary, so no one distracts you. Sit there and think. In 3 days I'll come for your answer. And take my advice, Arkanov. Choose right. There won't be a second chance. The escorts took him back out, but not to the barrack. They steered toward the shizo, a stone box sunk into frozen earth. In the corridor, a thin broken moan bled from a half-open door. Arkin cut his eyes sideways. On the floor inside lay Komarek, a kid he knew, quiet, harmless, in for some nothing. His face was pulp. 2 men stood over him. Arkin knew them, fallen thieves turned administration tools. One turned and looked at Arkan, nothing human in his eyes, just dead, empty frost. A guard shoved Arkan hard. Eyes front, scum! They locked him in solitary, concrete 283 meters, a folding bunk chained to the wall, slop bucket in the corner, a pinhole window under triple bars. The door boomed shut, the bolt slammed. Silence became absolute. Arkin sat on the cold floor. He understood everything, the raid, the talk, the glimpse of Komarek, all parts of one production, staged by Major Belkovich, not just pressure. Step by step, he herded him into a corner, cutting every exit. He'd shown the stick, barrack pogrom, threat of the press cell. He'd shown the carrot, parole, a new life. He'd shown the example of those who refuse, Komarek. And he gave him 72 hours of cold and silence to let that horror, those doubts, that offer sprout roots, poison his will. Arkan shut his eyes. Yakut's face rose. Hold fast, brother. Greek's face with its mute command. Remember who you are. And Major Belkovich's face with a thin smile. Yakut must fall. 3 days, 72 hours, 4,320 minutes. In this concrete coffin, cut off from the world, Arkan had to choose. He knew the price of any choice, life, his own or someone else's. The external pressure Greek always talked about stopped being abstract. It had a face now, calm, cultured, the face of Major Belkovich. That face scared more than any criminal's snarl, because behind it stood a soulless system that saw thieves, workers, and punks as expendable parts in its total control machine. The war had climbed a rung. The first strike landed straight in Arkan's chest. Night in the zone was a living thing. It breathed with consumptives' coughs in the barracks, distant shepherd barks on the wire, metal squeal under the knife-cold wind, and a silence so dense it pressed your eardrums harder than any shout. In that silence, Sadoy had learned to hear unspoken words. In recent weeks, the silence screamed betrayal. It started small, a trifle only he would catch. During a sweep, the guards moved with suspicious purpose, not the usual random rummaging. They headed straight to Pasha Phylin's stash, an old thief whose word weighed more than a cubic meter of concrete. Phylan held the kiddie's letter there, an answer from the outside they'd awaited 2 months. They found it instantly. Phylan, 15 days in the hole. The letter, on the ops desk, Major Nezdilov. A failure, painful, humiliating. The council buzzed like a poked hive. They hunted the rat. The trail went cold. Sadoy sat on his bunk edge, peering into the dark. Men slept or pretended. Sleep was a luxury here. He replayed the chain. The letter blown. Then a sudden raid on card players in the supply room, where the stakes were serious. They grabbed 3 thieves, tacked on a new charge, illegal gambling, another precise hit, too precise. Someone was piping intel to the op, someone inside the circle, one of their own. The thought sent a chill that had nothing to do with drafts. In their world, betrayal ranked worse than murder. Murder could be justified, revenge, justice, honor. Betrayal could not. Punishment was one, death. Slow, exemplary, so no one would ever fancy the idea. A snitch wasn't just killed, He was erased from life and memory, leaving only a grim legend of retribution. Vaska Yula stirred on the next bunk, a 20-year-old who'd landed here on a dumb kid case but had shown grit. Sadoy himself had noticed him. Quick, sharp, bold. He'd taken him under wing, taught the code, trusted him with small things. Not just a runner, almost a son he might have had if life had bent another way. Yula breathed the thieves' idea. He looked at Sadoy with puppy awe and would jump into fire at his word. Or so it seemed. "Can't sleep, Uncle Arkash?" Yula whispered. His voice sounded clean and trusting in the dark. Sadoy's heart pinched. He didn't want to believe, couldn't. Yula? His Yula? Impossible. He drove the thought away as delusion. The rat could be anyone, some broken old-timer or a newcomer sucking up. But not Yula. "Thinking, Vajja, thinking," Sadoy rasped, not turning. "No hiding from thoughts here. Sleep, work tomorrow, hard day." At morning roll call, standing in a gray mass of identical coats under blade wind, Sadoy caught the op's look. Gnezdilov, short, thick, a face carved from frozen wood, didn't look at the line. He looked at Sadoy, and in that look was mockery. The well-fed sneer of a hunter who knows the beast is cornered. The op knew a snitch nested in the thieves' family and savored it like a gourmet sips wine. He toyed with them. After the forest shift, hands buzzing, back broken, Tooth, Sadoy's stocky, scar-mapped enforcer, beckoned him toward the bathhouse. In the vestibule that stank of rotwood, bleach, and sour sweat, Tooth handed him a tight roll of cigarette paper from a loyal man in the red block. "He saw your Yula coming out of the ops office, at night, not the first time." Sadoy unrolled the scrap. 2 words, scratched in chemical pencil. "Yula, snitch." He stared. The world warped. The letters swam, smearing into a filthy blot. Not just an accusation, a sentence, and not only for Yula, for Sadoy too, for warming a snake, for believing. He chewed the paper to pulp and swallowed. Bitter saliva burned his throat. "What do we do?" Tooth's voice was flat, axe blow simple. "Verify," Sadoy squeezed out. His voice sounded foreign. "One last check, so not even a gnat can find a seam." The plan formed by itself, simple and cruel, like camp life. That evening, Sadoy called Yula. He kept his tone usual, tired, fatherly. "Vasya, serious thing, need a letter out, urgent, about a breakout. Through a free-hired trucker hauling logs. Tonight, during loading, you deliver, risky. If they catch you, death row." Yula's eyes flicked aside for a fraction. Enough. Sadoy read all of it. Fear, confusion, a desperate attempt to mask both. "Of course, Uncle Arkash," Yula said with too much heat. "For the common cause, I won't spare my life." "Good." Sadoy handed him a fake, an empty but carefully sealed sheet. "You deliver and come straight back to me. Not a word to anyone. Got it?" "Got it, Uncle Arkash." At night they waited. Sadoy, Tooth, and 2 trusted thieves crouched in a dark corner of the carpentry shop with a view of the zone gate. No smoking, no talk, just waiting. An hour, 2. The gate never opened for a log truck. The breakout route was fiction end to end. There was no driver, no run. Then the tower's beams began to scissor the yard. A shout. "Alarm!" Slides slammed. Dogs barked. Guards stormed barracks, faces to walls. Total sweep. They hunted organizers of a breakout. They hunted a ghost. Sadoy crouched in the dark and felt something snap inside. Yula hadn't come back. He'd gone to the op. He'd sold a non-existent breakout to earn points, to save his skin. By dawn, it settled. The zone had been turned over, nothing found. The op raged. Sadoy felt only a killing emptiness. They found Yula in the laundry. Tooth dragged him in, pale, shaking, eyes of a trapped animal. They took him to the boiler room, the deadest spot in the camp, where the roar of the furnaces ate any scream. They were waiting, Sadoy, Pasha Filin, freshly out of the hole, and 3 more thieves. Not a council, a court. "Speak, you rat," Tooth growled, shoving Yula to his knees before Sadoy. Yula trembled. Tears spurted. He crawled to clutch Sadoy's legs. "Uncle Arkash, forgive me. They broke me. They said what they'd do to my mother. They showed letters. Said they'd bury her in a madhouse if I didn't report. I didn't want to. I swear I didn't. He sobbed, choking on words and snot. He spilled it. Gnezdilov summoned him after the first blown move. Threats, promises of a shorter term. At first, he refused. Then they beat him half to death and threatened his mother on the outside. He cracked, became the ops gnat, eyes and ears in the thieves' family. He gave up Phelan's letter, the card players, the fake breakout. Sadoy listened and felt nothing. No pity, no anger, only cold. He looked at the boy he had thought a future of their world and saw only a quivering chunk of meat. The price of life. There it was. His mother's life against the lives and fates of his brothers. He chose. "Mother," Pasha Phelan said softly, and everyone fell silent. His face was ashen with camp sickness. "Everyone has a mother, son. I had one. He did." He nodded at Sadoy. "All of us. But there is the law, one for all, above mother, above life, above everything. Without it, we are not men. We're a herd, cut down one by one. You betrayed that law." Eula lifted a streaming face. "Uncle Pasha, I'll fix it. I'll kill the op, order it. I'll stick him myself. Just give me a chance." Sadoy rose slowly, came close, and squatted to eye level. "A chance. You ask for a chance. Did you give Phelan a chance when they sent him 15 days to the hole? Did you give a chance to the 3 who caught new time? A chance is given once, Vasya, when you choose your road. You chose." He spoke quietly, almost father-like. That calm made Eula shake harder. "Don't, Uncle Arkash. Don't kill me. Please," Eula sobbed. Sadoy stood and stepped aside. He looked at Phelan. The old thief gave the slightest nod. The decision was unanimous. "Tooth," Sadoy said, not turning. What followed was quick and routine. Tooth and another lifted Eula by the arms. He didn't resist. Limp as rag. They dragged him toward the big furnace mouth. The roar swelled. "No! Not alive! Knife! Knife!" Eula screamed, voice breaking to a squeal. No one listened. Sadoy turned away, not from fear or squeamishness. In that scream, he heard the collapse of everything he believed. He had brought this boy into their world. He had taught him the code, and now he sent him to the fire, the price of life, of his authority, of the thieves' law, a short, terrible cry. It vanished into the furnace's roar, then the smell of burned meat. Sadoy stepped into the frost, low, gray sky. He lit a cigarette. His hands trembled faintly. He forced them still. He was a crowned thief. He had no right to weakness. Judge and executioner. Phelan came, stood silent for a time. "Hard on you, Arkady," he said at last. "I'm fine," Sadoy said dully, blowing smoke. "You did right," the old man went on. "No other way. Rot has to be burned out, or it eats us all. The op won't stop. He'll hit you now. Expect it." Sadoy said nothing. Phelan was right. The war was only starting, and he'd just paid the first installment. He'd sacrificed the one he loved like a son, for the idea, for the law. But staring at the indifferent gray sky, he asked himself for the first time, was the idea worth this price? He looked at his hands. Yesterday they patted Eula's shoulder. Today they sent him into the fire. No visible blood, but he felt it. Sticky, hot, unerasable. The price of life was unbearable. The bill would keep coming to the end. He wasn't sure he had the strength. Darkness thickened over the zone and inside his soul. No exit. Night draped the camp in a clammy shroud. Wind moaned in the barracks seams like a stray inmate's soul. Far on the forbidden strip, the dogs barked lazily. In the high-security barrack, 2 sat on a lower bunk, a vacuum around them, an invisible line no worker or half-thief dared cross. Here lived Crest, the crown thief whose words set harder than camp concrete. Beside him, drawing on a roll-up of cheap makhorka, sat Gray. Smoke coiled under the single-caged bulb, air thick and heavy. Sweat, damp, tobacco, and unspoken strain. Another sweep had just ended. The guards had torn everything up and found nothing. The kitty was safe. The tension drained, leaving sticky fatigue and an intimate lull. Crest took his time. His face, cut by lines and scars, was an old map, each mark a stage, a prison, a loss. Fingers bore inked rings that told more than words. At last he exhaled and spoke, not looking at Gray. "You think you've got it, Gray? You think you've seen score settling, spilled blood, fought punks, so you're in the know? You're just at the threshold, the cliff edge." He paused, letting the words settle in the cold air. "You know why they call me Crest? Cross?" Gray shook his head. "In their world, you didn't ask. Not about ink, not about names." Crest ran a bony finger over the big cross tattooed on his chest. "Not because I'm pious. There's no God here. The guards shot him at the gate. They call me that because I put a cross on myself as a kid. 1946. I was 13. He spoke flat without emotion, like reading someone else's sentence. "The war ended. Hunger didn't. Mother died of typhus. Father vanished near Königsberg. I was alone in a gutted city. Street kid. We were weeds. They pulled us up, crushed us, and we still pushed through the asphalt. Hunger tied my guts in knots. First time I stole a loaf from a stall. The baker caught me, big man, took me home, not to the militia, fed me, said, 'Ask and I'll give. Stealing's a sin.' Next day they took him for fiddling with flour, and I understood there are no righteous here. There are the caught and the not caught. I joined a pack. We lived in basements, breathed mold and freedom. They chased us, beat us. We belonged to ourselves. Our law was one. You die today, I die tomorrow. First stretch for a pocket job. Juvenile lockup. That's where I got my first schooling. Not kids there, little wolves. That's where I first saw a man get put down. Not for debt, not for betrayal, but for nothing. Because he was weak, because he couldn't answer back. I answered with a shiv made from a spoon. Didn't kill him, but I opened his belly. They added time, but they started to respect me. I learned the second rule. Fear is currency. The more of it you hold, the richer you are. Crest spat on the concrete. Then came camps, over and over. Article 50. Politics mixed with criminal, Vorkuta, Kolima. I watch men freeze their fingers off to dodge work. Watch them eat the dead. Watch the strongest snap. And the thieves' world lived on, a state within a state. Its own law, its own treasury, its own executioners. To become a thief, wanting wasn't enough. You had to prove you were ready to die for the idea, for our idea, that you wouldn't bend for cops, for criminals who chose their own way, or for punks who served the administration. He drew again on the cigarette. The ember lit his cold, empty eyes for a heartbeat. They crowned me in 53 after the mustached one died. The punk war flared in the camps. Criminals who'd fought at the front came back and wanted their rules. We bled for the motherland while you hid on bunks, vermin. But the thieves' law is one. A thief never takes a weapon from the state's hand, never serves it. Ever. They turned punk. We cut them, not them us. Blood by the sea. The administration loved it, sat back and rubbed its hands as the head count dropped. At one council, we judged Zmai, an authority who cozied up to the op for a warm job, promised to keep the barrack tidy. We sentenced him. Short counsel, 20 thieves, 20 views, one decision. And then I saw what you've only heard about. Crest leaned toward Gray, voice thinning to a hiss. We didn't just stick him. Too easy. It was a show execution. We buried him alive, right behind the barracks near the old boiler. At night, we made him dig his own grave, not deep, waist high. He dug. Thieves stood around him, silent. Only the shovel screeched in the frozen earth. He cried, begged, said a demon led him astray. The sentence was passed. When the hole was ready, we shoved him in. Two held him, and a third, Pasha Compass, God rest him, said, "You lived like a louse, you'll die like a louse in dirt." And they began to bury him, slow, first to the knees, he screamed, then to the waist, already a rasp. I stood 2 steps away. I saw his eyes, no fear in them, only a void, endless black void. When the dirt reached his chest, he stopped thrashing and just stared at the sky, while they threw earth on his shoulders, his neck. The last thing I saw was a clod smacking his face, and that was it. Silence. Only wind. We stood a minute and left. They built a shed there later. No one ever knew. Not the guards, not the workers. We knew. And each of us understood the price of betrayal. Not a knife in the ribs, erasure, like you never existed. He leaned back to the wall. The barrack fell into absolute quiet. Even the cough in the far corner died. Everyone was listening, holding their breath. That's what it means to be a thief, Gray. Not just live by the code. Be ready to pass that sentence and be ready to have it passed on you. You won't have a family, no home. Your family is the brotherhood. Your home is prison. Any woman to you is a liability because a thief can't have anything permanent. Nothing they can grab you by. You're a walking corpse. Your only duty is to guard the law, our law, because it's the only thing here, the only thing we have, the only thing that separates us from civilians, workers, punks, and the men in epaulets. Gray said nothing. The makorka had gone cold and soggy in his fingers. Crest's tale wasn't a story. It was initiation, warning, testament. He looked at his hands, young, strong, not yet inked as heavy blue as Crest's. He thought about his own path. He wasn't a street urchin. He'd grown up in a normal Soviet family. Father, a frontline soldier turned factory worker. Mother, a teacher. After the army, he went to that same factory. Everything straight by the line. Party, komsomol. 5-year plan in 4. Then he saw the rot. The shop foreman, a party rat, was stealing parts, selling them under the table. The plant director built a dacha with state materials. Lies everywhere. Glory to labor on the posters. Steal every nail from the job in real life. You're the boss, not a guest. How did you land here? Crest's voice cut his thoughts. Not a casual question. An exam. Gray raised his head and met the thief's cold gaze. I was looking for truth, he said hoarsely. Fool. Thought it existed. We had a crew chief, Semyon Petrovich, old school, fought through the whole war, honest till it squeaked. He caught the section head, director's son-in-law, skimming non-ferrous metal, tried to talk first, then wrote to the party committee. They mocked him. Then he wrote to a newspaper. Next day they jumped him in an alley, broke 2 ribs and an arm, said if he chirped again, they'd kill him. I saw it. I knew the hitters, the son-in-law's goons. His fists clenched white. I went to that boss's office and told him to leave the old man alone and answer for what he did. He laughed in my face, called me a pup, said he'd grind me to powder, said he had everything wired, said men like me and that old man were dirt under the system's boots, and he was the system. In that moment I understood. There is no truth, no law, only force. Whoever's stronger is right. I don't remember grabbing the heavy paperweight. I remember the crunch. He fell. I stood over him and watched the blood. I felt no fear, no regret, only cold and a strange, terrible rightness. They gave me 15 years hard for intentional grievous. He lived, crippled. In court he screamed, I was a bandit, an enemy of the people. I looked at the judge, the prosecutor in their fresh tunics, and knew they were his kind. One pack. I was the alien. When they brought me to transit, they tried to pin me, break me, make me work for the criminals who were cozy with the administration. I didn't break. I remembered that cold and that bastard's words. The strong are right. I fought with teeth, nails, anything. They beat me, threw me in the hole. I didn't turn punk, didn't become a goat. Then the right men noticed. They taught me there's another law. Real, not on paper, but in blood. I chose it. Because in that world I came from, there was no place for me. There I was a criminal. Here I could become someone. He stopped, breathing hard. His first confession. He had never spoken so openly. But before Crest, after what he'd heard, you didn't lie or leave things out. Crest watched him a long time. No praise in his eyes, no blame, only a deep, old understanding. You sought truth and found force, he said slowly. Many start that way. Remember this, Gray. Force isn't a paperweight or a knife. Force is will. The will to live by law when everything around is against you. The will to die for it. The will to send another to his death for stepping from it. You killed for justice, as you saw it. A thief kills for the law. That's the difference. Justice is personal. Law is one for all. Our law. He rose. His shadow stretched huge on the wall, warped into a crucifix. Tomorrow there's a council. We'll judge Ryba. He skimmed from the kitty. A letter came from the outside. We'll test him here, and they'll give the word to you. Everyone will watch you, Gray. Thieves, workers, the punks warming their ears. His life will hang on your word, your first true test. You will have to look him in the eyes and say what he is. If he's a rat, you must demand the highest measure. Not because you hate him, because the law commands it. Crest stepped close and set a hand like stone on Gray's shoulder. Think tonight whether you're ready to be an executioner in the name of our order. Whether you're ready someday to lie in a hole like that, snake if you stumble. Think hard, because tomorrow morning, once you speak, there will be no road back. Ever. He lifted his hand and walked into the dark of the barrack. Gray sat alone in the deafening quiet, cold bit to the bone. He stared at his palm and suddenly saw it gripping a shovel's handle with perfect clarity. In the pit below, a man wheezed, choking under dirt. For the first time in the camp, he felt real fear. Not of guards, not of a knife in the ribs, of himself, of what he was becoming. The night stretched without end, and in the wind's howl he no longer heard a prisoner's lament, but the muffled cry of someone being buried alive. Night in the zone was alive. It breathed knife wind, squealed rusty steel on the towers, coughed with the dog's dull bark. In Barrack 7, the thieves' corner and back, the air was thicker than outside. It reeked of macorca, boiled socks, and unspoken threat. 3 days had passed since Gray hanged himself, and no one laughed. Even the hardest crooks, used to death like the morning horn, walked with eyes down. The kitty had been opened, a chunk gone. Not all, but enough to make a charge of planetary scale. Money scraped from shops, from parcels, from card wins, the blood and nerves of the camp brotherhood. Arson sat on the lower bunk, back to the wall. His face, always chiseled from stone, looked like a mask of prison concrete. He hadn't slept. He stared at a spot on the filthy plank floor and saw Gray's face there, blue, tongue lolling, swaying in a noose knotted from his own coat in the workshop. The op, Major Soshnikov, logged a suicide over gambling debt. Nonsense. Gray didn't play big, had no debts. Arson knew that as sure as his 5 fingers. On the next bunk, an old man wheezed, crowned before the war, somewhere near Rostov. He'd seen enough for 10 lives and 100 deaths. A living legend, a walking code. In recent days he barely spoke, just smoked, spat to the floor, and looked at Arsène with a heavy expectant gaze. He waited. The whole thieves' mass waited. Crip across the aisle blossomed. He swaggered through the barrack, shoulders thrown wide. Bulldog face with a crushed nose, oozing confidence. Loud talk, slaps to his errand boys. Even jokes. He acted like a new master. He thought by removing Gray, Arson's right hand, and pinning the kitty theft on him, he'd broken Arson. Thought the path to zone boss was open. He was wrong. "It's time," Arson said into the hush, voice rough like spitting a mouthful of ground glass. The old man nodded without turning. "Don't delay, Arson. Rot spreads fast. Today the kitty. Tomorrow, souls." Arson stood. Slow, measured movements of a hunter, saving strength before the last pounce. He walked to Crip, who was spinning a tale for his lackeys. Crip shut up and looked up at Arson with a cocky grin. "Counsel," Arson said flatly. "Now, drawing room." The grin slid off Crip's face. He understood. Not a chat. A summons. "What's this, Arson? Nerves gone? Want to wag your tongue?" He tried to sneer, but the voice shook. "I said counsel," Arson repeated, steel in his tone. He didn't look at Crip. He looked through him. 15 men packed the drying room, sour with damp rags. Only the most respected, authorities, barrack watchers. The rest stayed outside, a living wall against guards, hounds, and snitches. They braced the door with a mop. The single dim bulb threw jerking ugly shadows. They formed a half circle. Arson and Crip stood center. The old man sat on an upturned bucket, a silent judge. "Speak. You called," Crip tossed, arms folded over his barrel chest. "The kitty's gone," Arson began without raising his voice. "Gray, may he rest, hangs from a noose. The op says debt. We all know that's a lie. Somebody helped him soap the rope. That same somebody reached into what's ours." Hinting at something, Crip bared teeth. "Maybe your Gray skimmed the kitty and, seeing the heat, strung himself. Neat, loose ends in water." A heavy breath rolled the room. Smearing a dead man they respected was a serious breach. Asking from the dead. "Gray was clean," Arson cut him off. "He'd choke for the common before he'd steal a kopeck. I put my head to his name." He looked around the circle. "Who answers for you, Crip?" "I answer for myself," Crip barked. "Got proof?" Or just gossip from old wives? Show fact. You'll get your fact, Arson said calmly. He nodded at the door. 2 thieves shoved in a small, terrified inmate, Chisik, a Crip errand boy always hovering near. What circus is this? Crip reddened. Dragging errand boys to a thieves' council? You crazy? This errand boy is about to talk. Arson's tone went cold. We'll listen. Speak, Chisik. Tell the brothers how you ran to the op with notes from your master. Tell how you and Crip strangled Gray in the tool room. Tell where you stashed the kitty. Chisik raised his head, primeval horror on his face. He looked at Crip, then at Arson, then at the old man. His lips trembled. Shut up, filth! Crip roared, stepping in. 2 men barred him, shivs from spoons forward. I'll smear you in shit. Speak, Arson repeated. The word carried the full weight of inevitability. Chisik spoke, stumbling at first, choking on tears and snot, then faster, as if to vomit all the poison he'd been fed. He told it all. How Crip had long been dealing with the op, feeding him intel on breakouts and riots for favors and a promise to help him become zone boss. How they ambushed Gray when he went to check the kitty stash. How Crip strangled him with a coat while Chisik held his legs. How Crip took about 3,000 rubles, huge by camp measure, and gave a cut to Chisik to mind, left the rest in place so suspicion would fall on the dead. When he finished, the drying room froze. Drips from wet laundry were loud as shots. All eyes on Crip. His face went from purple to ash. Sweat drew lines down his temples. He's lying, he croaked. Rat lies. Arson primed him. Wants me gone. Where's the money, Chisik? Arson asked quietly. In the old building's vent, behind the bathhouse, he whispered, eyes down. Arson nodded to a man. He stepped out and returned 10 minutes later with a filthy bundle. He untied it. Money spilled on the floor. 3s, 5s, 10s, the very bills. It was over. Crip knew it. He swept the room with a hunted, crazed stare. No swagger left, only animal fear. Brothers, don't buy it. A setup, he babbled. Arson looked at the old man. The old thief rose slowly from the bucket. He stepped to Crip and looked him in the eyes. You didn't just steal. You didn't just kill. You sold our brother to the cops and smeared a shadow on the dead, he said softly, but the words hit like a bell. You're no thief. You're no man. You're vermin, a louse, a punk, and the law will ask from you in full. No, Grandpa, don't, Crip whimpered, shedding the last scraps of human shape. He tried to drop to his knees, but 2 men pinned his arms like a sack of filth. Take him, Arson said. The sentence needed no extra words. Everyone knew. For this there is only one punishment, not quick, not merciful. One that would live for decades, so anyone tempted to follow Crip would wake in cold sweat. There were 4 of them, Arson and his 3 most faithful and mute, moonless night, black as barrack despair. The tower beams swept lazily, but the industrial yard was huge, packed with dead, dark corners. They led Crip to a pit dug for a new shop's foundation. He didn't fight. His will was broken. He just trembled and mumbled nonsense, prayers or curses. A filthy rag gagged his mouth. At the edge of the 3-meter hole, they stopped him. Arson peered into the ink. It smelled of wet clay and oblivion. For Gray, for the brothers, for the law, he said softly, not to Crip, to himself. 2 walked Crip to the lip. He braced, mood, madness in his eyes, a hard shove. He fell, a dull thud. From the pit, smothered moans full of pain and despair. 4 shovels lay at hand. Arson took one, cold steel on his palms. He scooped heavy wet earth and threw it down. A dead thump, again, again. The others joined. Work took its rhythm. From the hole sounds came, first desperate grunts and scrabbling as Crip tried to rise. Then, as dirt fell faster, heavier, the sounds changed. Dull thuds as clods hit flesh. The moo turned to a bubbling rattle. He was choking. Arson didn't stop. He drove the blade, cast down earth. No hate, no satisfaction. Only an icy void and a heavy rightness. Not revenge. Work. Filthy, necessary work, cleaning their world of rot. The earth rose to his ankles, then knees. He stopped moving and only twitched like a shot bird. When it reached his waist, one last long, fading groan rose from the pit, more wounded animal than man, then silence. Only shovels biting dirt and 4 men breathing. They worked another hour until the hole was near full. Then they leveled it, tamped the traces, tossed scrap, rebar, torn roofing felt. In 2 days, concrete would be poured. No one would ever know a man who had dared to break the law lay in the shop's foundation, buried alive. Dawn bled as they returned, dirty pink to the east. Arson walked last. He looked at his hands, caked with earth. He would never wash them clean, not of this earth. The old man waited in the barrack, same spot, smoking. He asked nothing, just looked at Arson and gave the barest nod. Power had passed. Arson was zone boss now. He'd won, avenged a friend, defended the code. He sat on his bunk. The barrack was waking. Coughs, a curse in sleep. The bolt clanged outside. Reveille soon. Another day in hell. Arson shut his eyes. No victory behind the lids. No relief. Only a black pit and the bubbling rattle of a man covered in earth. He had become king of this small, brutal world. The crown's price was unbearable. He sat on his throne of dirty bunks, the strongest and the loneliest man in this zone. He was a crowned thief, but from now on, he lay buried alive with Crip in the same pit. His grave just had no walls and no bottom. There was no way out. The horn tore Dawn's quiet. Another lap of senseless, merciless existence began. For Arson, this day differed from none before, nor from any still allotted to him. He was at the summit, and that was his bottom.